Hey there, Dr. Michael Lepore with Sarasota Vascular Specialists, here to talk to you today about aneurysms. What are they? Why are we concerned about them? And why should you be concerned about them? And I think one of the things that a lot of times people aren't understanding is what actually even is an aneurysm. And so I'm going to try to give a little brief description of what it means, why we care about them. And I think first and foremost, what you need to understand, although these beautiful drawings I have up here are definitely not one of my talents, but nonetheless are of the thoracic aorta here and the abdominal aorta here. But you can have an aneurysm anywhere in the body. It can be in the legs as well. It can be in any of the arteries, basically in the neck, in the brain. But the most common ones that we probably see a lot of are the ones that we're going to talk about today. The process just basically starts by, if you imagine an aorta that has multiple layers, kind of like an onion in it, and the layers that are there will bellow out. So on here, you'll see that you have the normal appearing aorta, which is pretty straight. This is the thoracic aorta up in the chest. And then where I have these lines drawn out here, that is how you get type of an outpouching in the aorta itself, which becomes concerning as we see that based upon the size that you're going to see. And the location and size determine what we're going to decide is going to be dangerous to somebody's life. Same thing in the abdominal aorta here. You'll see the red lines here are the normal abdominal aorta. And then the darker dots are as we're starting to get an aneurysmal change. That aneurysm can grow, and that can happen for a number of reasons that are really a little beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but it has to do with genetics, it has to do with exposure, cholesterol, diabetes, family history it becomes important, as we talked about from a genetic standpoint, hypertension, and then some more rare diseases that have to do with collagen tissue disorders in the arteries themselves. Here's the most important thing that I want everybody to think about is symptoms. Because a lot of times there are no symptoms. Many people don't even know that they have an aneurysm, but they're walking around with it, unbeknownst to them that maybe it may be a ticking time bomb in them ready to have a problem. Sometimes the only symptom ends up being when they start having pain because it's grown large enough to cause chest pain, belly pain, possibly an aortic dissection or some other problem that then creates something that's a bit of an emergency. And that's not where you want to be because those outcomes are really not as good. You really want to make sure you recognize it in advance. And that's through imaging. So who really should be imaged? Well, anybody who's got a family history of anybody in their family that's had an aortic aneurysm in the past should absolutely be imaged with at least a simple ultrasound in the belly. And in the chest, it ends up being a CAT scan because we can't see that with an ultrasound because of the bony structures that are there and limit ultrasound imaging of that area. So once the imaging shows us where the aneurysm is or the size of the aneurysm, then that makes us have a decision that somebody's got an issue with regards to the aneurysm. And then we think about surveillance. And surveillance means once the aneurysm's found, is it large enough that it needs to be repaired? Typically in the chest, it's about 5.5 to 6 centimeters that we start thinking about it. And then in the abdomen, it's 5.5 centimeters or thereabouts. That's the largest where we say, hey, we really need to do something about this. Or if it's growing rapidly, that would be another reason. That's the reason for surveillance. Let's keep an eye on it. Let's make sure it's not going to become a problem. And then treatment, again, depends upon where it is and a lot of anatomic considerations that we have to determine that, again, are a little beyond the scope of what I'm trying to give a brief discussion regarding aneurysms today. Is it involved in the chest? Does it involve the big vessels that come off and go up into the brain, into the arms? In the belly, does it end up having involvement with the kidney arteries or possibly the mesenteric or the gastrointestinal arteries that are higher? These are considerations that tell us as to whether or not we can repair these with endovascular, less invasive means going through the groins and opening a stent graft to treat these, or is it something that requires open surgical treatment? Again, the biggest takeaway I'd like everybody to take from this is screening is everything. You want to make sure that you understand that really you should have an ultrasound if you haven't, because it could save your life, and all the rest of your history becomes important when you see a vascular specialist to supply that to them. So in summary, again, aneurysms, what are they? We talked about them being growths on the aorta, anywhere from really anywhere in the body, but on the aorta, the larger ones from the chest all the way down into the abdomen. The symptoms a lot of times can be asymptomatic, which is why, again, screening is going to be, you're getting the issue of what I'd really like everybody to do, screening, and then imaging is going to be the screening that tells us that, and different types of imaging, again, take us to maybe CAT scan to look at it a little bit more closely. Surveillance, depending upon size, and following up with a board-certified vascular surgeon who's going to be able to follow that for you and offer you the best treatment options. Open surgery, endovascular surgery, those are going to be the important things that you want to look at. Again, Dr. Michael Lepore with Sarasota Vascular Specialists, and if you have any further questions or specifics, please just leave it in the comments.